The US president is on track for a speedy acquittal as senators reject new witnesses in Donald Trump's impeachment trial. Joining us live now from Washington is Alex Shephard, reporter with the New Republic. Alex, pretty significant this.
Yeah, it's been a big week for the president. I think in the short term, he's gotten just about everything that he wanted. The impeachment trial was very fast. There were no witnesses, and attention is mostly focused on more banal procedural questions rather than his misconduct in office. But I think in the long term, he'll certainly go and say that he's been exonerated when the Senate votes to acquit on Wednesday. But I think the situation is slightly more complicated than that.
It's pretty much followed what many thought, though, hasn't it? Republicans deciding to say no to witnesses.
Democrats hoped that they could, as soon as they started the trial, that they could put pressure on their Republican counterparts to call witnesses. That didn't end up really happening at all. Instead, this dragged on for 5 days. But the vote that happened yesterday was basically what we would have predicted going into this trial.
When we say a speedy acquittal, what happens next?
Well, the president will certainly go and say that he's been exonerated, and they'll have a big rally celebrating beating back the Democratic witch hunt. But I think what will happen is that this is going to keep dragging on. John Bolton's book comes out next month. He'll presumably be called before the House to testify. And what will happen is that the revelations in that book will be used to pressure Republican senators who voted to acquit or to not call witnesses. And they'll raise continued questions about the president's actions regarding Ukraine.
Do you think it's going to be a help or a hindrance? It's pretty much split, isn't it? Opinion on what the impeachment trial will do for the hopes of Donald Trump getting re-elected.
Yeah, I think we're in a weird situation in the U.S. where no matter what happens, everything stays the same, and there aren't very many signs that this is changing anything. I do think that there's about 70% of people who did want witnesses to be called for the Senate trial. That could be a big issue, but for the most part, this has followed the same kind of party lines that we've seen for the last 3 years.
Let's get to Iowa and the Democrats. It's all starting to get moving now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it will be fast and furious for the month of February. There'll be 3 elections and 3 debates. And I think what we're seeing right now is that Bernie Sanders has sort of surged late, and he's looking pretty good in Iowa and New Hampshire. There are continued questions about what will happen to Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren, depending on how they fare in those first 2 states.
Has there been much of a reaction in the US to Brexit? Obviously, a huge story here yesterday.
The president and his allies are, sort of crowing that this is part of their global populist revolution, that, the president called this back in July. I think that they might have something to brag about there, but it's probably pretty exaggerated. But what you're seeing behind the scenes is that U.S.-Britain relations are growing more strained. There was this recent tiff over Huawei and 5G. And I think that points to the fact that, people in the U.S. expected the U.K. to draw closer as they moved away from Europe, but that may not be the case.
And problems with the Middle East agreement, of course, for Donald Trump as well.
Yeah, I think that this plan, part of it certainly involved internal Israeli politics as well as internal U.S. politics, but it doesn't seem like there's much runway here. They're certainly trying to kick the can down the road. The president has sort of, he's always moved internationally when times have gotten tough domestically, but it doesn't seem like there is much interest in this peace plan.
Okay, the coronavirus, of course, the United States has decided to close its border with China. Look, Australia doing something pretty similar, not quite as extreme.
Yeah, I mean, I think the White House has taken a pretty hard line here, and you're seeing a case. There was the 8th case in Massachusetts earlier today. It's certainly not a pandemic at this point, but the administration is making it very clear that they're going to take any very aggressive action going forward.
It's very Donald Trump, though, isn't it, to act swiftly?
Yeah, I think particularly with any sort of overseas fear mongering, you can always expect the president to move quickly. And while this hasn't become a part of his stump speech yet, given tensions with China, although those have eased somewhat, one wouldn't be surprised to see that going forward.
Do you see it affecting the trade negotiations at all?
I could, yeah. I think that the president has certainly wanted a deal. He's been pushing for as many trade deals as he can as the election draws closer. I think it's probably too late for any of these deals to make a big difference politically, except maybe in Iowa. But the coronavirus, I think, could create a little bit more tension with China.
All right, lightening the subject quite a bit. The Super Bowl, it has everyone's attention in the United States. And I know that, the president wanted a lot of the drama out of the way before the Super Bowl. It does just capture the imagination of the whole country, doesn't it? The ads themselves, multi-millions of dollars for 30 seconds.
It will be a very, very different and mostly apolitical day. Although we will have, I believe, one Michael Bloomberg ad, which he's paid $1 million for. But I, for one, will be welcoming the distraction of 5.5 hours of football, food, and advertisement.
The 49ers to win?
I expect the 49ers to win, so you should probably bet on the Chiefs.
Okay. Always good to talk to you. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.